Welcome, everybody, to the Leadership Equation. We are on episode number 21. I can't even believe that we've gotten that far. And we are here with a powerhouse group. We've been so excited to bring all of them on. And so we look a little like the Brady Bunch today, but we're going to bring massive value to you guys. Anybody who's watching, we've got Lance and Karina Loken and the entire leadership team at the Loken Group. And I am Linzee Ciprani. I'm the CEO of Ciprani Consulting and the Linzee Ciprani team. We're the top recruiting and consulting firm in the country for all things real estate. And I'm here with my lovely co-host, Christy Grossman, who is the CEO and owner of Ops Boss Coaching. And she is the ultimate resource for training and coaching for real estate ops bosses. And we are here again, like I said originally, with the Loken Group. And so what we're going to do today is we normally go into quickfire, but we're going to take them through who they are. They're all going to introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Lance and Karina, and then we're going to move on to everybody else in the leadership team here. And what you guys can do is just say what your position is, how long you've been with the company, and when you were promoted to leadership. Sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. So Lance, kick us off.
So thank you for having us first and foremost. I'm Lance Loken. And Karina hired me back in 2011 to join her on this mission. And previous to that, I was in retail at an executive level, and we'll be celebrating our 10th year next January.
Awesome. Karina.
Hey there. I actually got into real estate in 2008 and ran just an individual business for about a year and a half, but stepped out of production to get into market center leadership, and just took an interim position, which was great because one thing I really realized was how much I loved the production side at that time. And that's when Lance and I started the team in January of 2011. Here we are.
Here we are. Time flies. Who wants to go next? Christina.
Hey guys, this is Christina Wynn. I am the Vice President of Outside Sales for the Listing Specialist. I'm super excited to be here. I joined the Loken Group back in July 2014. And how our team works is if you're at the time AVA or personality assessment suggests to be outside production, we start as an ISA. So I started as an ISA, then transitioned out to be a listing agent. Then about a year and a half later, I believe, Lance, you can correct me, then I was transitioned as VP. And so my role is I coach, train, and hold accountable the listing agents. Also I'm scaling out of production slowly right now, with the exception of some luxury listings that I work closely with Sarah St. Marceau.
Good. So Sarah.
Which Sarah?
Sarah, you.
Hi, I'm Sarah St. Marceau. I am the VP of Marketing. I'm also running our luxury division. I've been with the team for almost 7 years now. And when I first joined the team, I was doing outbound prospecting. Lance was the only listing agent. So I was basically setting all of his appointments and then stalking him 5 times a day to get all the notes and find out which agreements were signed. So that was fun. And
all agreements were signed back then.
So I want to say probably not too long after I finished the 100 days, I had the opportunity to move into the VP of ISA's role. We were really starting to grow that division. And then about 2-3 years ago, moved into the VP of luxury listings role.
Love all this opportunity that's been created since the beginning. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I'm Elena. I am the VP of Operations for the team. I have been with the Loken Group for almost 7 years. So I was the 10th hire. So I've had the opportunity to see us grow from just a handful of people to the behemoth that we are now. I've done just about every role on the team from an admin perspective. And I've been in the executive leadership position for a little over 2 years now. I am responsible for coaching and training all of our administrative staff, as well as creation and implementation of systems and processes. And I'm the executioner, apparently.
Yeah, we're going to ask about that. We're going to dig into that. Amy.
Hi, so I'm Amy Flynn. I am the VP of the Inside Sales Division here on the team. I've been with the team, this will be going on 4 years for me with the Loken Group. And I actually was hired into leadership. I was hired as a backfill for Sarah St. Marceau from the VP of Inside Sales position. And so that's how I got here.
Awesome. And the other Sarah.
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Detmore. I am the VP of our buyer agent team here at the Loken Group. I was hire number 7. I'll be celebrating my 7-year anniversary with the Loken Group in April, which is crazy to me and great at the same time. I joined the team as a buyer agent. I was the 4th buyer agent, I think, that we had at the time. And we didn't have the ISA program. Like when Sarah St. Marceau just said she chased Lance down to get the appointment information, I remember that. Which it's crazy how much our team's developed since then. Yet about 2 years into my role as a buyer agent, I stepped into kind of a temporary director of sales role. And then as our listing team grew, then Christina, of course, moved into that VP of listings role, and I moved into the VP of our buyer team role. And we currently have 11 folks on our buyer team. We have 9 agents who are in full production, and we have 2 buyer partners.
Awesome. David, finish us out.
Yeah, so my name is David Weaver. I am the VP of the Builder Division. I met Karina on an airplane on the way to Vegas, so that's how I found out about the Loken Group. I have been here for 5 years, starting in February of 2015, with really the path to be a listing agent. My second month in, during my training of being an ISA, I had the opportunity to kind of switch into a director role with the Builder Division, and have been doing that ever since, and I love it. It's great.
Awesome. So for those of you joining us who have not been with us before, this is the leader equation. We are talking with entrepreneurs and their shotgun leaders, and this is the biggest group of shotgun leaders we've ever had, so I'm super excited. We're going to talk about the leadership formula, what adds to the equation, what subtracts, what divides, and what multiplies your success. And I'm going to toss it back to Lindsay, and we're going to dive in because we have so many questions for you guys. Super excited.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk through, right before we got on, you guys, we talked a little bit about profit and what's been going on over the last couple of years. And, you know, Lance, you kind of walked us through some of what's going on right now, challenging in the company. Would you mind starting us off there?
Wow, we're going deep fast.
Here we go.
Sure, absolutely. So around July of last year, we were seeing that the profit was dwindling, and we made a concerted effort to attack it and really dive deep in lead generating, prospecting. We had gotten to the point where we were in a space of waiting for leads to come to us instead of going after the leads. We do a lot of radio and television advertising. We also do a lot with new construction. So it was easy for a couple of years to get the business. And then last year, it started to become really difficult and we weren't prepared for it. So starting in August, we started losing money, and we lost over $500,000 just in the fourth quarter of last year. We've still lost money in January and February, which for us, that has been typical for January and February. However, we were still experiencing the repercussions from the fourth quarter of last year. The great news is everybody in the executive team has made a real concerted effort to do whatever it takes to get the business and really get their people held accountable at a high standard. And in March, we're profitable and we see a lot of momentum going forward, and we feel like we've righted the ship.
So what do those conversations look like where, like, that's a big number, 500,000.
Yeah.
What do those conversations look like among the leadership team? What do those conversations look like with the whole, how many people are on your team, by the way? I don't think we said that up front.
There's 86 people on the team.
Okay. So we're talking a large corporation right here. So you guys are having conversations as leadership, and then that message has to get disseminated out. What did that look like? Walk us through that.
So we started discussing it in team meeting, just not at the level that we probably should have in the beginning. And then honestly, we started really getting deep in November. And the really cool response was that the entire organization came back and said, you need to tell us this kind of stuff very early on so we can make changes then instead of hiding it. Honestly, we were trying to protect our team from having to go through that turmoil, because literally this entire exec team was bunkered down in a mode of doing whatever it could to help us get out of the rut that we were in. And we were trying to protect everybody. And knowing now what we know, we should have told people right from the get-go what we were experiencing, and we probably could have gotten the ship in the right direction that much quicker.
I love that. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah.
About the conversation?
I just want to add to that. I think the learning for us was that part of holding people accountable means full transparency. And I think we thought that we were helping them by protecting them. And in fact, we were doing them and the entire organization a disservice.
You know, Amy, you might want to say something too from the ISA perspective, because you were holding people accountable, but we weren't truly holding them accountable.
Well, I think what Sarah said was just a really valuable lesson in learning that sometimes where we felt like we may have been helping them by not being fully transparent, it actually was hurting them and hurting our business to just not be 100% honest and vulnerable and transparent. We on our team have worked really hard at really maintaining accountability, increasing accountability, being fierce with our accountability, and doing that in a way that still shows how much we care. Because I know that's a challenging line for any leader, is how can we push to greatness and still make sure we show respect and show how much we love them. And that's been a real growth space for us in my department and every department here on our team.
Well, I think too that it really raised the level of conversations that we were having. I think our industry in general has a habit of really focusing on units and volume, and we had to completely shift our mindset to focus on profitability. We can do all the units and volume in the city of Houston, and yet if our business isn't profitable, we don't exist. So I think what was really, really cool to see was this executive team really shift the mindset and start thinking like a business owner instead of like a real estate professional. And we put some really, really cool KPIs in place across the entire organization that now we're getting clarity on when our projections don't look the way we intend, we know what lever to pull in order to get back on track, where we didn't really have that holistic view before.
I love that. So you guys are looking a lot more on lead indicators, I imagine, instead of lagging indicators than you were
in
before.
Every role across the organization, not just production, in admin, in marketing, we've got it across the board.
I think another lesson that we learned too in the communicating with our team, especially not just within exec, was that we had so many of these really high level conversations with our exec team, and everybody, I mean, like, we have really been in the weeds of all of it. And I think all of us have learned a lot in the process and about, you know, tracking each of our department's numbers and whatnot. And then when we would communicate to the team, not even in an effort to protect them, like Lance was saying, because we definitely did some of that too. But when we really started telling more and more, I think it was easy for us to not give all of the dots for people to connect in context sometimes, because we had been part of so many conversations. And so that was a great learning experience for us, of being able to put on that, like, what if I'm in their shoes hat of the folks that were sitting in team meetings, so that when we did communicate things to them, that it was effective and that we gave enough context that they really understood the conversations we were having.
Did you have anybody leave during this time out of, like, maybe as you're starting to communicate things you've never communicated before and there's a little more pressure being felt by the organization to perform at a different level? Nobody left?
Nobody. That's awesome. No, well, and let me ask this question, which is a little bit of a piggyback, but when you guys started to look at those numbers, was it like, what was it? Was it appointments to actual like, what conversion was off to start to get behind?
So the biggest conversion was agreement signed to under contract. Okay. There was over a 20% decrease in that number from the previous year. And then from an accountability standpoint on the front end with the lead generating, we weren't producing enough leads to accommodate the salary that they were currently earning. So we needed additional production from the front end to support their salaries. And then on the backside, we needed to support from a conversion standpoint to closing it.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Well, and so it's an interesting thing, right? Because then your appointments were still where they needed to be. And that's where I feel like most of us focus on our business. So when you get to your size, which is 86 people, like you've got a huge operation there and you've got to continue to see that all the way through. So that's a really good learning experience, I feel like.
You know, you made a comment about the people. Karina, you should probably talk about last year and the turnover of the people too.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did have some turnover and we grew really fast the last 2 years. We learned a lot of lessons inside of that too. Scaling culture, scaling training, scaling accountability was huge for us. You know, it starts with making the right hires always. And we definitely missed the mark on a couple of folks. I think more than that, even though, was we didn't have enough people with enough bandwidth doing all of the training. And we were just throwing so much on our leadership team to get that done. Amy in particular just really took the brunt of our new hire training and was a champ, and Elena with our success team. And so some of the things that I think folks in the past had gotten when there were only 2 people starting at a time, that we had a lot more of those one-on-one conversations, and not because it was written down to train about it specifically, but we were just talking about it and they were with us more. We didn't scale that, I don't feel like, as intentionally as we've now seen we need to, and we've really made a change there. And then of course, accountability, right? It's like going to a wedding and you're one of 10 people at a destination wedding versus going to a Texas wedding and you're one of 350, right? You can go to the wedding and sneak out the back before the barbecue starts and the bride and groom aren't going to notice that you left. But if you're at a party of 10, everybody's, you know, you're going to be there till the club bar closes down, right? So, you know, there's that little bit of it too. And as we started getting more and more accountable with the members of our team, we definitely had some folks that self-selected out too. And so we just, for a variety of reasons, I think we saw a lot of lessons last year, but we definitely had some changeover in the folks that we have here too.
Well, I think the biggest part of that, Karina, was not having a bench for everybody on the leadership team. That was a huge lesson for us. And just from the leverage piece, we learned very quickly that we needed to put a system in place in which we had people who are ready to go and step up into a leadership role. So we now have a second level of leadership within our team that we call our success coaches, and they get MAPS coaching. They work with us on how to help hold our team members accountable on a weekly basis and things like that. So that's been really helpful. So.
Mm-hmm. So
it feels like you guys have really kind of almost redefined what it means to be a leader on your team from the early years to now. I've watched the coaching increase. I've watched the accountability increase, as opposed to just being a leader who's sort of like, I'm going to help you and I'm going to do it. You guys have gotten really purposeful in your leadership, I feel like.
Right. And we've had to take the role on, we chose to, doing whatever it takes. And I'm going to echo with what Elena said earlier, that when we decided to share with our team members during team meeting that we're not profitable, we're not hitting our numbers at this point, the first thing was, we're not going to go on our reward trip where Lance and Karina take us and our spouses with us to celebrate in another city or country together. That was the first wave. And what we got out of that as a discovery was, even Sarah St. Marceau, on your marketing team, you had someone on your team that realized and raised their hand and said, what can I do to help? How can I help? Right? When you have the right people in your organization, when they're in alignment with your values, with your vision, with your mission, that they're going to be all in as well. And they're going to raise their hand and say, well, how can I help? How can I make the marketing ads more effective so that we're not spending as much money? because then Lance and Karina also broke down how much money we're spending marketing, operations, and just getting that awareness and clarity. And so it just really, really helped empower even our team members to elevate themselves in a way where they wanted to chip in and say, for example, the listing agents thinking we don't really need to use our listing booklet anymore. We can send them sellers a digital one and save money with the printing costs from there. And so it's just been really nice to see that transformation all throughout the departments and all throughout our team, just being all in.
Well, and to add to that, Christina, coming out of our learnings, we now have a monthly town hall where we're basically opening it up to the entire organization, talking about the numbers, talking about where we are from a production and profitability standpoint, and opening up the room to whatever questions they want to ask about the business.
So if I'm listening right now, how did you create that environment? And a lot of people that are listening don't have 86 people on their team. It may be a team of 5 or a team of 10. How do you as leaders create that environment where people are empowered to ask the hard questions?
Humility. Karina and Lance do a phenomenal job during team meeting and sharing. And it's really hard. It's like, we can even tell when you guys were about to share the announcement that we're losing money, we're not going to go on a trip, that it was as if you guys had a huge rock in your throat. And then the waterworks happened, and sorry, Lance, didn't mean to call you out there. And it's just to see the authenticity of their leadership and the humility. It just got everybody taken back to a place where we're like, holy crap, yeah, we want to help. They care so much about us. Our leadership cares so much about us. We want to do whatever it takes to help.
I think the other thing too is constantly reminding people that you want the feedback, that you welcome the feedback, that you care about what they're thinking, and then taking the feedback and showing that you mean that. Because I think that it's twofold, right? I think sometimes people are really good at saying, we care, we want your feedback, we want to know what you're thinking. And then when they tell you what they're thinking, you feel immediately like they didn't want to hear that, right? So I think it's the twofold. One, you have to constantly be saying how much they matter, how much you want their feedback, how much you care about their feedback. And then 2, you have to genuinely mean that. And when they give it to you, you need to take it with stride. You need to own it and then make change, right? Because when they see the change happening, you start to build that culture where people mean what they say. They genuinely do care about our thoughts here. Our thoughts matter, and it drives change. So I think it's a cycle that can really be built over time when you continue to do those things and you do it authentically and genuinely.
So can any of you share, I think that's awesome, feedback driving change, because there's that last step, the change has to happen. Yeah. And you don't necessarily act on every single piece of feedback and make a change, but you can communicate back about it. Are there some examples you guys those of you who are on the leadership team, not the owners, can share with us about feedback that you may have given to Lance and Karina that was tough, that they actually acted upon and made change in the team? Alana's like, I'm censoring myself.
I mean, I can think of even just from our mission statement. Our mission statement came from Lance and Karina. That's where it started. And we as an organization, including the leadership team, at some point felt just misalignment, that it didn't really encapsulate everything that we were wanting. And I'm sure Elena can say it a lot more eloquently than me, yet that was just something, to me, a perfect example of how we were able to drive change from what the Loken Group started out as being and what our mission was there to what the organization could then get behind and where we are now. And our whole team buys into what our mission statement is because they had such a valuable part of that change.
Well, I think too, Lance is so much of a traditionalist when it comes to business. He comes from corporate America. And so I know you guys are probably familiar now with this sort of push for remote work and more work-life flexibility. And that is something that a lot of the people on our team want. We generally hire people who are in that sort of Gen X millennial type age range. And so a lot of people on my admin staff really wanted some remote work time. And that was a hard conversation to have. And yet we were able to, I was able to go to Lance and Karina and say, this is something I think that will really benefit our team in the long run, and show our team that we hear them and we want to give them a benefit that they're asking for. And that's been going really well, and they seem to really love it. So if from even as small things as policy changes all the way up through changing our whole mission statement, which is the filter by which we make business decisions. So they've always been really open to that.
I love that. That's not a small policy change. That's a lifestyle change. That's a huge impact change. Great example.
Well, let's switch over to communication, because that's something that a lot of people that watch this podcast, they have a really hard time with, is figuring out how to communicate between leadership and the shotgun. So there's a bunch of you guys here. Did you have communication issues ever with Karina and Lance, or has it just been unicorns and rainbows forever? Everything's been perfect. They always listen to you and you never disagree.
I think what's so amazing about Lance and Karina is the fact that they allow us the space to come to them and not be yes people, right? So we can come to them at any time when we have a disagreement or want to take a different approach with something. And that's true of really our entire organization, is that they are looking to us to bring new ideas and change in process. It doesn't have to just come from them. They're really looking to us to do it. And Elena said it earlier, sometimes we call our meetings Thunderdome, because we may not always agree at the beginning, but at the very end, we're all working towards the same goal. So whatever that looks like, we know we're in alignment there.
Do you have any unwritten rules around that, around your communication during Thunderdome?
Well, what I was going to say real quick is we hired a group of leaders that are polling us, not pushing. We're not polling them. And that's what I love about this group. You know, they're always constantly looking for new, innovative ideas. They're not status quo, and anything's on the table.
Well, when you have this many strong personalities, like there can be that boom, right? And so walk us through, what does that look like when you guys do have heated conversations, and give us an example of one that happened that, like, hey, this is what it looked like, and this is what we did, and this is how we came out of that.
So I'm not going to offer up the example. However, back to the conflict conversations, we as a team read Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team maybe 2 years ago. And the first dysfunction is absence of trust, and the second is fear of conflict. And so I think just as a group of leaders and a team in general, we trust each other. And no matter what the ultimate decision is, it's something that's based on trust, and we trust that we're all going to steer the ship in the right direction, and we aren't afraid of conflict. And we talked earlier before the call started that we do have a lot of high D personality on this team, and that's okay. And we're not afraid to push back when we may not agree on something. And we've created this environment where, yeah, we do leave our Tuesday executive meetings sometimes going like, "Woo, that was a big one," like whatever. But we have to have these conflicting conversations in order to move the business in the right direction. Because if we all just sat there and agreed with everything Lance and Karina said, no offense, you guys, I love you, yet we wouldn't be where we are right now, and we also wouldn't be setting ourselves up to go wherever we're going next.
Well, the one thing we love to say all the time is, when you have one leader or, one person running the entire organization, that becomes your lid. When you have an executive team like this, your lid just exponentially got bigger.
And Lance always tells us to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So we do that very well.
Well, and I think to the question that you had asked as well, just to add to that, Sarah mentioned that level of trust. We all trust each other. And that means when we're communicating, it comes with a level of respect. We may not agree with what someone is providing as a particular approach, but we respect them. And at the end of the day, we are working towards the same goal. So it's really just about making sure we're always communicating with a level of trust, and knowing that whatever decision is made, it's always with a business mind, meaning we take emotion and ego out of the equation. It's about the business at the end of the day.
Right. It's care and candor, just like with anything. And I think we have a good idea of what each other's weaknesses are. I don't know if you can tell, some of us have a little bit of RBF and we can't help it. However, just this week, we had it in our town hall. I texted Christina and I said, "Hey man, you okay?" And she was like, "Why? What is my face doing?" I was like, "You're coming off a little aggressive right now." And she's like, "I'll smile more." So like, even with small things like that, like we're not afraid to just approach somebody, and it's all in the intent and the context, I think.
That's awesome.
Well, and so tell us with communication. So did any of you guys have a hard time, even on your leadership team, like communicating with somebody else on the team, and you had to work through that together?
Yes.
I can answer that. Lance and I have always had a very contentious relationship. Less so now, but we're both very, very high Ds, and we're both very corporate-minded business people. And we, exist in very different roles in the organization. And so we have certainly had our disagreements in the past, but I think what we both respect about each other so much is that we know that we're always committed to getting better and doing better and excellence, and that we can give each other that feedback and have that conversation, and then still, wake up the next morning and it's all good, because at the end of the day, it's just about like, let's make the organization better. Let's help the team. Let's push, let's overcome the obstacles. Because it's just not worth getting our feelings hurt about it, because we know like deep down where it's really coming from.
Yeah.
But to others, it may look like, a volcano is constantly going on.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask that question. So all of us, I think all 10 of us on this call are high D, which is really unusual. Most people that we have on the podcast, we have a mix of behaviors. And I'm imagining that you don't have all high Ds, all 86 people. So how do the non-high Ds navigate that in your organization when the smoke's coming up and you guys are all good with that, but they're like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
That's Elena's department.
Very carefully. Mine are all the high C's and the high S's, right? Who are afraid of change, which we are constantly doing. They're afraid of conflict, or they avoid conflict. And so it just takes a lot of patience and one-on-one conversations and reiterating conversations and giving visual representations of things. So I think we're learning to better communicate with all different styles of communication instead of just blanket presenting a message and expecting it to stick with everyone.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I also coach the marketing team, and they are high C's and S's. And so, just like Elena, I've even had them reading fierce conversations because for those who are going to success coaching roles, they have to come out of their comfort zone when they're coaching others and holding, the people that they're coaching accountable. And, even reframing it as, it's not so much conflict, it's how are we going to move the business forward? And at the end of the day, that's the goal. So don't look at it as a conflict, just look at it as we're going to have some different opinions and we're going to experiment, and, we're all headed in the same direction at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Conversation, not a conflict.
Yeah.
And I think so much of it comes down to the expectations that you set. I mean, honestly, like so many of the things that we've talked about today, right? So starting even in our hiring process, there's a lot of conversation, and we really take the group interview very seriously too. And it's really, for our team, it's very much about a culture fit and an opportunity for our team to kind of, warn, for lack of a better reason, the candidates that are coming on too, right? We're really intense. We work really hard. We play really hard. If that's what you are looking for, like, we're a great fit. If not, now's the time to kind of think about that. And we're okay if they're not. And all throughout, we spend a lot of time in our new hire training that first week talking about our core values, how they show up, things they've already seen happening, and setting an expectation there about what, how we operate and what's most important to us as an organization, and the communication and everything. And, in team meeting, we do a lot of shout outs and ahas and really love on each other, appreciate each other. And I think everybody by the end of the first week also knows that sometimes we snap at each other and, aren't afraid to speak our mind if there's something that somebody really feels strongly about. And, that expectation is set before really we walk through the door. We have there's a 4-page conversation expectation, all about, different kinds of conversations, right? So sensitive issues or, just any kind of emotional issues. And we always very faithfully have that conversation as somebody's onboarding with us, so that we really do know right from the get-go, and they have an opportunity to say, hey, this has always been, a hard spot for me or whatever.
Do you guys have any, we've had a lot of people in real estate are in family teams, right? Across the country, tons and tons of family teams. Is there anything different as the shotgun leaders that you all experience having a family leading your team, or family owners? Any wise words of advice? What'd you say, Amy? Sarah?
I said, how candid can we be right now?
1,000%.
Lance,
no one's listening.
Go for it.
I think it's just knowing that you're coming into a family. I feel like Lance and Karina are my family. The leaders on this call are my family. And so we are very much a business, and we run as a business. And there is also family, and family is sometimes messy, and sometimes, like, my sister doesn't always like what I have to say, and I love her. She knows I love her. And at the end of the day, we always work everything out fine. I think that the same holds true in business. When you're in business with a family business, it's just, you have to kind of know that too, is that at the end of the day, we're all here for the same purpose. We care passionately and deeply about where we're headed, and we're a big old messy family. And so it's okay. At the end of the day, the love is there and the trust is there, and that's what moves us forward. And I think I honestly think it's also part of what makes the magic. And so I think that the team has to know that, right? That it's also a family.
Well, and I think it's an interesting thing, right? The SC personality, especially when Christy and I talk to them throughout the week, it is very much like they're afraid to speak their mind or say anything that might rock the boat a little, because and I'm like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I get fired. I'm like, really? Like, you think that you're potentially going to get fired? And I think, sometimes we have people underneath us, especially underneath a leadership team like you guys, that have got to feel like, how do I do this? So how do you coach them into that? How do you help them with that?
I know for the marketing team, what's been helpful is we have weekly masterminds where it's just our group on the marketing team. So they feel very empowered to speak up there. They may not feel as empowered to speak up when there's like 80 people in the room. A few of them will, but I think that helps them feel like they're having a voice and a say in how we're moving the business forward, even if they don't feel like getting up and saying it in team meeting.
Well, I think it's also offering to role play a situation with them. I do that sometimes in coaching when there's an individual conflict. A lot of our admin work one-on-one with another agent. So if one of my listing partners is struggling with a particular area of her relationship with her listing agent, sometimes we'll role play how they're going to have one of those fierce conversations, and I'll walk her through it. And that, I think, helps a lot, especially for those high seasonesses.
And also from a communication standpoint, I feel that we do a really good job as leadership in communicating with each other, that whenever there is a challenge, for example, Elena would come to me and say, hey, just want to give you a heads up. This listing partner feels this way because the listing agent did this. And so it's a coaching opportunity for both Elena and I to help coach that awareness so that we can help them change the behavior and also empower them so that they can take charge of really strengthening that partnership within each other.
Let me ask this. So just as a follow-up there, you guys do such a good job with, retention and hiring and all things recruiting. Have you brought the victim personality into the organization, and how quickly are they out Or have you done a really good job of not bringing that in?
I don't know about big time.
There's the answer.
I can talk
Well,
to
I think that we do a very good job of holding true to our values and hiring people who are in line with who we are. And so by and large, I think the answer to that would be no, which is why we were all sort of silent. However, I do think that also there are some times where we miss the mark, or you can only get to know someone so much through an interview process. And so while everything they may have said or may have done sounded perfect and sounded in alignment and felt in alignment and their history showed alignment, there's been times where sure, we've gotten in business and through our time, we recognize like, uh-oh, there's some things showing up that like not what I thought they were, or it comes out a little bit of that victim mentality. And maybe are they not taking full ownership of what they do and holding themselves accountable? We do our best. In my opinion, we first look to ourselves, because I think rule one in great leadership is, what are we missing? What did we do wrong? What could we have not taught or set expectations around? Like Karina said earlier, just is there something that maybe we missed the mark on? Have we done a poor job of training? Did we not give resources? So we're going to go through all of that first and really work to coach one-on-one to that behavior and that person to see if we can make it a win before we would go out of business with someone. I believe that we exhaust those options to make sure that we feel really good. I mean, at the end of the day, we follow the hiring process CV so closely, and we do take so long to get to know somebody. We know there's a reason they're here. And so we don't just jump to ship quickly. And there's been some where we just miss the mark. However, by and large, what we've seen is more than anything, maybe it was a slight training gap. Maybe there was some knowledge piece they were missing. Maybe they hadn't had awareness yet in that, and we were able to coach them out of it. So I believe it's kind of doing that analysis, that check first, and see what are we missing to make sure that that's really what's showing up. And it's not just that there's more work to be done together.
Or that they're in the wrong seat on the bus. We've made that reevaluation sometimes too.
Well, and I think a lesson that we learned really early on, before all of these guys were subject to our very high Ds between Lance and I. Lance is 100% D and I'm 99. So like there's not a whole lot of room in there for not having a lot of passion, shall we say, behind anything that's going on in the business. And early on, we were in each other's lanes 100%. And at the very end of our first year, we had a MAPS coach that encouraged us to do a book called Strengths Finder. And it's a little assessment tool that's very different from all the other things that we have ever used on behavior or personality. But it's just like your natural God-given strengths, and the companies that they've studied, like Elaine was just saying, putting people in the right seat, companies where they've restructured not on past experience or training or anything, but really on those natural strengths, have like on a dime turned production and just catapulted into thriving space, and their production's gone through the roof. And so our MAPS coach had Lance and I do that, and we recognized that we were doing almost exactly the opposite things that we should have been doing in our natural strength zones, and like flip-flopped, right? All of our day-to-day stuff. And we went from not being able to have one nice word with each other pretty much the whole first year. I mean, it was just as bad as you can imagine, then 10x that, to like on a dime, our fighting stopped. And our kids, even for quite a few years, literally remembered like the day mom and dad stopped fighting. It was really interesting. And it was so much about getting in our right strength space, but also being really clear about what the responsibilities were. And I think it doesn't matter what relationship you're in, whether it's professionally or whether it's, you know, in a friendship, or if it is, you know, obviously something like this where he and I are in the same company together. You know, for all of us in this group, without real clarity around who owns what responsibilities and what decisions, and just really truly knowing what your lanes are, that clarity really helps everybody communicate better and get more done faster.
What advice, Lance and Karina, would you guys have for people that are listening, that are in the early stages of growing their business, and the entrepreneur is the solo owner, the solo leader with their first kind of developing leader? Like and you're still in production, you're still in everything, and yet you need to transition from salesperson to business owner to leader. What advice would you have in that area?
Find high D personalities that are going to drive the business forward while you're still growing. Also, everything that you do, it's always about we versus I. Our entire business is built around the Loken Group, has nothing to do with Karina or myself. And then whenever there's something that's going wrong, it's our fault. Whenever there's something going really well, it's the entire organization's celebration. Having that mentality, and like Detmore said earlier, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. We want people to be willing to take risks. We want people to be willing to think outside the box and take ownership. And the people in our organization, especially the exec team, they take true ownership on everything that they do. And when they screw up, we use it as a coaching opportunity instead of yelling and screaming at people, because that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, and I think another thing we kind of got lucky on too, Christy, when you're making those initial leadership and learned later on that we just how lucky we got. We use a hiring assessment tool that actually one of the things that it prompts you to really dig into is if the people that you're bringing on are really amazing or prefer to start things from scratch and create the framework and see it to fruition, or if they would prefer to take something that already has an existing framework and tweak it and just constantly think better, different, better, different. And we got very, very fortunate in the beginning that the initial leaders that we brought on love to build from scratch. And that's such an important quality, I think, to also be looking for in your first couple of leaders, because you need people around you that can just take it and run with it. And not everybody has that skill set, nor prefers it that way, right? Some people, I think everybody can do it both ways, but usually people have a real preference. And that was really, in hindsight, we got really lucky, but I think a big piece of our initial success too.
What was that assessment?
We used the Keller Personality Assessment, the KPA tool through Keller Williams.
Yep.
Back then we used the ABA though.
Yes.
Yeah, and it didn't prompt, that's why, it didn't prompt us, unfortunately, to ask that question. We got so very lucky. But now, that we have that tool, it's something that we can be more intentional and look for.
And are you still looking for those same qualities as your organization is scaling, or are you looking for a variety of those kind of people, different qualities?
All of the above.
We're looking for talent. At the end of the day, we just want talent. We'll figure out where to put them.
And just to let everybody know, as a framework, we typically don't hire folks from real estate with real estate backgrounds. We'll take them, right? We usually look for corporate sales, marketing, hospitality is a great resource. And so when Lance says talent, we truly just mean, do you have drive? Do you have passion? Do you have commitment? And can you handle it? And do you have the intellect for that? So that's what we really just keep an eye out for, talent.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that, especially when you start to get, even less than how many you guys have, but there are a lot of people that are like, I just need the cogs, because they feel like I need these people to do the things so that the leaders can stay leaders. How do you feel about that?
Well, we hire for where our business is going to be in 6 months, not where our business is right now. We never want to find ourselves in a situation in which we are hiring out of desperation. So I think if you're thinking from that business mindset and you're planning your business in advance, I think we have an org chart to like 2036 or something crazy at this point. And so you have to know the direction you're going before the plane can take off, right? So then you're much less likely to find yourself in that situation in which you're just hiring the cogs. You actually are lead generating for talent the same way you would lead generate for business.
Yeah, and I don't know who said this quote, but it's leaders don't create followers, they create other leaders. So, our goal has always been, how can we develop other leaders on the team? Because our business will grow to the extent that we grow other people on the team. If we just have cogs, like Elena said, our business won't grow the way it should. And we certainly won't grow in the way in which I know Lance and Karina have a vision for us to as well. So
how has that process evolved and scaled as you've grown? What did that process look like in the early years? How were you developing leaders, and how are you developing them now? Or maybe it's the same.
I think there's more, I think there's more intentionality now. I mean, I hope everybody can tell that this gang that we have the privilege to get up and work with every day is smarter and better at most everything than Lance and I. And so we're really blessed that we've got that, right? So there was some intention in hiring people smarter than us. But from a systems and processes standpoint, I think we would not be completely honest if we said we had it all together the first year. And, it's been an evolution. We've gotten smarter and smarter over time. The tools, we didn't really have hiring tools the first couple of years. Lance was like a superhero for hiring and had a lot of experience from his corporate days. And we relied heavily on that. And we got a lot better at hiring great leaders once we really had the tools in place to have a process to that. Sarah, what were you were going to say something too, Marcel?
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the amazing things that Lance and Karina have done to help us be better leaders is we all have MAPS coaches. And Elena alluded to this as well. The success coaches that were growing as leaders on the team also are being coached by a MAPS coach. So they have invested heavily in our growth and other leaders coming up in the ranks growth through coaching. And I think that speaks volume for them as leaders and making sure that, people on the team who want to grow into that role have the tools and resources to do so as well.
How early on did you guys do that in the early years? I think it was pretty early, right? Put people into coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always had MAPS coaches. We started out with the MAPS coach in July of the first year. So 6 months into it, we had a MAPS coach ourselves. Yeah. And then as people went into executive leadership, we got MAPS coaches for them as well. And we have the same MAPS coach, so we have consistency across the board too.
Well, and I can't tell you how many people don't feel like they should be investing in coaches especially for their operations team, which drives me nuts because they're the ones that are driving the business, right? And it matters. Would all of you guys say that having a coach and having somebody to push you? Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I think, to your point, Lindsay, we come from a support standpoint. Like I was a CFO for several years. You see what the salespeople are doing. They're getting all the recognition, the notoriety. We were very purposeful from day one that our success team, and we call them the success team for that exact reason, they're the ones that make our business grow. And without them, we're nothing.
Yes. Amen.
Amen.
Yep. So something that's super cool to me too is like, you can just tell that there's for me, there's zero ego on this entire call. And there's a bunch of leaders sitting in front of me. So, and it feels like such little drama in your organization. And just what is that, you guys? Is that the culture that you're building? I know that you're doing a good job of onboarding people. What do you attribute that to?
I think we're less focused on drama and getting involved in that, and more focused on how are we going to make this work and how are we going to grow. I think we all have a common goal, and that starts with the culture and kind of the people that trust one another and care about one another. And because of that, it's just it's a natural alignment, right? We're not focused on petty little things that so often get in the way of big corporations or even small teams, but rather on hey, there's a challenge. How are we going to come together and make this work for everybody?
We also drink a lot.
We do.
No, I ask, are there any unwritten rules that you guys have, unwritten culture rules or unwritten communication rules, don't go to bed angry or whatever?
That never works.
Just the drinking.
Yeah.
Yes, we drink a lot of wine.
And we give each other permission to call us out if we're walking around like our stuff doesn't stink, so it's just sometimes we have our moments, right? But really it starts with Lance and Karina. They're so humble, and like what David said, we just focus on getting stuff done and just don't have time for the drama. It's childish. It's high school.
And I feel like you guys just have such a it's so all about coaching, right? And you guys are coaching your people underneath you. And so if you have that element of a coach is going to call you out on things. So I feel like if a lot of the leadership has a coach and they're really attempting towards growth in all areas, then the team underneath you is going to be the same, right? Because you guys are actively coaching them.
I was just going to say,
we
one
don't
of the
see
things
people underneath us at all.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly what
We don't
Christina.
see it that way. The people that we lead, we hold them above us, and because we're here to serve them. So definitely it's a mindset change for us for that. Yeah.
My whole back cringed when you said underneath us, because we're here to serve them, and that's the mentality every single executive here has.
Well, and to your question, Lindsay, too, I think it's not necessarily about all just the drama side, right, of the question, but it's also how can we have our focus be on appreciating and showing gratitude to people, right? And one of the things that we do as part of our onboarding process is we have everybody do the love languages, the 5 love languages assessment. And so all the leaders in our organization for each other, I mean, like we have a file where we have all of them for everybody in the organization, so that if anybody does anything that we appreciate, we can show that gratitude. And that honestly, that nips most of it in the bud, right? Because then when there is a little something that pops up that has to be addressed, everybody knows, like David was saying earlier, the vein that it's intended in, and then it's all because we care so much about moving each other forward.
How are you vetting coachability in the recruiting process, in your interview process?
How are we vetting coachability? Like if they're learning based? I think a lot of that shows up in their track record, and what their history has been, what they've plugged into and engaged in. A lot of it, honestly, one of the things that I loved about David in our airplane conversation right away that pops up with, I think, most of our candidates that we end up really, really interested in forward with is the questions that he asked, right? And so I think a huge insight into how coachable people are is how and what they ask you questions about.
Love that.
And Karina, I think the other big thing is, because you're right, I mean, she's right, and it definitely comes back to track record. We also strategically look for team in their background, and as much as possible, team sports. If they've been in team sports, they've been coached by a coach. They understand coaching is for the purpose of making you better and loving you into the potential that they see in you. And so I believe since we've got that really coming through a lot of people, it's what they've got in their background. It lends it very nicely to fitting in so well here and understanding the coaching relationship we have with them.
Well, and it's also, when we look for people, it's people that we want to be around, right? It's people that are generally coachable and subscribe to that, getting better and improving are people that you enjoy being with, right? And that's what we want. We want to create a culture where, while it is business, and we're here to, ultimately at the end of the day to keep the doors open, drive a profit, we enjoy what we do, right? So we wake up in the morning, enjoy hanging out with our coworkers at work and outside of work, and just like-minded people. And usually you find that with the type of people that have been on teams and tend to play well with others.
Well, and I think in coming out in the interview too, to what Amy was saying, if you're digging deep in the CV process and someone isn't transparent about any failing forward moments, it was all sunshine and roses and everything was perfect, that sends red flags for us as to how coachable they actually are.
So many good things. Well, we're rounding towards 3:00 here, and I do want to make sure that everybody knows that this leadership team actually goes on the road here and there. And so I don't know which one wants to talk us through that, but I know you have 4 locations that you're going to be. And that was something that really, sitting down with your leadership team in Philadelphia and hearing each one of you speak and being able to ask you questions was like a huge moment for me in my business. And so I want to make sure other people know that that's a possibility. So who can tell us where you're going to be and when?
No idea. Lance?
Not sure of where, but one of the things that we did right from the get-go when we started getting asked to go speak was, instead of it being just myself or Karina or the both of us, we've always had the exec team going out and speaking, because we feel like it's much more of a value add to get people from every department talking instead of just listening to people from a 30,000 foot level. That doesn't accomplish anything. So we feel like this has added a lot more value.
And how can people who are listening that want to be part of this team or connect with you guys, what's the best way to do that?
Karina?
Sure, they can go onto our website, which is www.thelokengroup.com, and there's a careers tab, and they can apply through there.
Awesome.
And they can go to TLG Shares as well and find so many amazing tools there. And you guys are amazing with charity and just your time. We're so thankful that you guys came on here and spent an hour with us, an hour plus, because you got here early. And so thank you so much. We know your time is very valuable, and we know that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. And I'm sure they'll be reaching out. So
I have to say, I was a little worried how the whole 10 people on the podcast was going to go, but I think the way that this worked, every single one of you contributed value and did not talk over one another. That speaks volumes about the level of leadership and humility that you guys have. So kudos to you on your success.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our pleasure and our honor to be with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.